Alright guys, what is good? Welcome to Flav Orellana's MMA show. I'm your host, Flav Orellana, brought to you by Four Corners Sports New York. Alright guys, I've been on it on a few days. It's a lot that has been going on in the world of MMA. We just recently had a card headlined by Holmes versus Aldana. So I'm going to kick it off right there. So Aldana, UFC's trying to push her, so she could possibly be the next contender to fight. Amanda Nunes. Holmes, former champ. She obviously her most famous win was over Ronda Rousey, and that concluded to her getting a title. But Holmes on the quest of cupsing another championship. She's trying to face Amanda Nunes again. She had lost Amanda Nunes because Amanda Nunes hasn't lost in a number of years. But alright, so 5-round main event fight between Aldana versus Holmes. And Holmes looked impressive. I mean, she turned back the clock. She had the right game plan. Aldana, boxer. Holmes has background in boxing and kickboxing, but she played it safe. She played it well. She was able to play into her distance. Fought in range. Aldana looked like she was struggling, trying to cut off the octagon to get closer and applying pressure, and she was never able to do that in the 5 rounds. Holmes, beautiful sidekick. That was like her secret weapon right there to keeping distance. Had clipped Aldana with the sidekick, I want to say a good 8 or 9 times, and they were each one of those sidekicks was timed very beautifully. It just felt like Aldana was never able to get comfortable. She was able to clip Holly maybe like once or twice in the 5th round, but Holmes played an excellent game plan. She was able to get the victory over Aldana. It's unfortunate now it becomes difficult because UFC wanted to push for Aldana. They wanted to have a fresh face to face Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes has already beaten Holmes. Now this goes into our next fight that I was going to talk about with Germaine de Randamie versus Juliana Pena. Juliana Pena is trying to bounce back from a loss. She's trying to beat the number 1 contender, Germaine de Randamie. Germaine de Randamie's last fight was against Amanda Nunes, and Amanda Nunes was able to take her down onto the floor back in December, and to avoid any type of stand-up game between Germaine de Randamie. Obviously, Germaine de Randamie is world famously known for her kickboxing, but who would have thought that Germaine de Randamie was going to win by submission? I didn't think that. Ended up pulling through with the rear, what's it called, the guillotine. I'm sorry, I was going to say rear naked chokehold. She ended up pulling through with the guillotine, putting Juliana Pena to sleep. Now, going into those 3 rounds, honestly, I had favored Juliana Pena if I was going to go into the decision. The Randamie game plan was a little bit unusual. I wasn't expecting for her to get hit the way that she was, but it was very, very impressive to see de Randamie now executing. Now she has submission game. Now she has those tools that she can use in a further fight. Now what the UFC may want to do is, I think the most popular things to do, you don't have Holmes versus Amanda Nunes. You don't have Germaine de Randamie versus Amanda Nunes. Now you got to eliminate those. One of those fighters has to be eliminated from that topic. So have them both fight one another. They had fought previously, and I think that in this stage of their career, I think it should be exciting for a rematch. I mean, we all like rematches. We all like if the person that has lost in the prior fight can eclipse, their revenge. So I think that, give or take, the way that these 2 ladies had fought this past Saturday, wouldn't be surprised by like January these 2 fight again. It just sucks because now, if Aldana would have won, she would have fought Amanda Nunes after Amanda Nunes would have fought Megan Anderson. Given if Amanda Nunes was to win, She's more than likely as to be the favorite of winning that fight. So this just leaves, I don't know what Aldana's going to do. I don't know what's going to happen to Juliana Pena. Do you match them up together since they both lost on the same card? I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's just a lot of options that you can do for that division. But that's what ended up happening for this UFC Saturday's fight card. You also had the return of the natural-born killer, Carlos Condit. Now, Carlos Condit has been away from the game. He hasn't won a fight since May 30th, 2012. You know, your boy over here was born on May 30th. So, last time he ended up winning was on my 22nd birthday. 5 years ago. And it's a long time. He ended up facing Court McGee. Ended up dropping Court McGee at the ending of the first round. Ended up breaking his nose. His nose was all the way like this. You know, most of his nose was on the left side, and he ended up in between rounds, or I'm sorry, in between the second round, he ended up pushing it back together, fixing his nose. I mean, guess he has a background in fixing noses, but yeah, Carlos Condit looked impressive. You know, somebody that hasn't been in the game for quite some time. That knockdown helped out a lot. Ended up winning by unanimous decision. The natural-born killer is back. Glad that he ended up getting back into the win column. Now for Carlos Condit, who knows what's gonna happen? Obviously, you're gonna put him on this like Legends tour. I actually would like to see him fight Robbie Lawler, you know, in 2021, or you could put him down with Matt Brown. I know there's talks with you know, having Condit versus Nick Diaz. I don't see that happening, only because of the fact that Nick Diaz is trying to aim for higher lights. You know, wants a bigger spotlight. I just see that from the Diaz brothers. They're not gonna want to take something mediocre. Not to say that Carlos Condit is mediocre. You're talking about a former interim welterweight champ. So I don't know. I would say that depending on how Robbie Lawler is after his fight against Mike Perry, it's most likely that, or, you know, Matt Brown, the immortal Matt Brown. I mean, you got tons of options, a lot of fun options that you can play around with. But it was exciting to see Carlos Condit back. Co-main event was Yorgan De Castro versus Carlos Felipe. Now, last time, Yorgan De Castro fought, ended up fighting Greg Hardy. Ended up hurting his foot. He was actually winning the fight before he hurt his foot. Ended up hurting his foot, you know. Greg Hardy ended up checking one of his leg kicks. And then after that, he was just very stationary. And Greg Hardy ended up capitalizing. He won by decision. That fight ended up happening, I think, in Jacksonville. Sometime in the one of the Jacksonville cards. But Yorgan De Castro and Carlos Felipe go at it in the co-main event. Very exciting fight. I forgot the referee's name. Sataki, I think his name. Definitely got his money's worth. You know, forcing both of those fighters to not hug it out. I mean, nobody wants to see two overgrown men hug it out. And anytime they were clinched, anytime they were holding onto the fence, both were going at it. So, Carlos Felipe and Yorgan De Castro both were just eating shots left and right, clubbing each other out, and it was a very interesting fight. Honestly, I thought that fight would have lasted no longer than the first round, just because usually, you know, the heavier set, heavyweights normally don't last that long, but I was wrong. It lasted the full 15 minutes. You know, if you want to watch that fight, I highly suggest it. I mean, it was good to see, you know, two heavyweight beasts go at it at one another, and Carlos Felipe bounces back, you know, from a loss. You know, gets another win. The win column, I think he's now 8-1 or 9-1. I would like to see Carlos Felipe fight Greg Hardy. I would like to see Yorgan De Castro fight. I would want to say Tanner Boser, but I think Tanner Boser is ranked, so I don't think that would work. I don't know who Yorgan De Castro would fight. I think he's on a 2-fight losing streak. It doesn't look good for him. I mean, do you want to pair him up with Juan Adams? I mean, that's something right there. But doesn't look so good for the Mad Titan. I think that's what they call him. In further news, now if you guys been on Twitter, you guys follow Jon Jones, you guys follow Israel Adesanya. Oh man, that is some serious beef going on. Both of them are going at it at one another. I checked yesterday. I haven't checked today. I'm gonna check for you right now to see if anything new has gone regarding Jon Jones and Israel Adesanya. So nothing today, but there was Jon Jones was posting pictures and videos of Israel Adesanya getting knocked out during his K1 kickboxing days. He had gotten knocked out years ago, and just making fun of Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya didn't like it so much. He ended up posting like pictures like this. I don't know if you can see it, but you see Israel Adesanya all dazed out, and then you see Luke Rockhold when he ended up getting knocked out by Jan Blachowicz. There's they're making fun of one another. Jones is making fun of the fact that he has pink hair, and how he thinks that he belongs. He belongs to. How do I say it? I gotta reiterate my words. Yeah, Jones wasn't very too pleased with the fact he ended up humping Paulo Costa. I think he found that weird. He questions Israel Adesanya's sexuality. I mean, it's a lot of stuff. Israel Adesanya bringing up Jon Jones's mother. You got Chandler Jones, telling Israel Adesanya to back off, that he's be careful what you wish for. So I mean, Israel Adesanya, I don't know, he's not making too many friends in the Jones household. Now, why is this all relevant? They both want to fight each other in 2021. Dana White had said he's cool with that. Times have changed right now, ladies and gentlemen. Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns. Now, why is that relevant right now? Well, Kamaru Usman pulled out of the fight for UFC 256 because he needs more time. He needs more time. He barely got hit when he faced Jorge Masvidal. They just clinched each other. They were hugging each other out. And he needs more time. He needs more time to prepare. So there's no main event as of right now for the December card, the December pay-per-view. This would be the perfect time to slip in Israel Adesanya and Jon Jones at the main event. There's talks about having Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier for that main event spot. I don't see the point in that right now. I think put Conor McGregor and Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya had already said prior that he wants to fight one more time before the ending of 2020. Why not put it in that card? Jon Jones wants to fight. He's been trying to call out Israel Adesanya for quite some time. He's saying, you're willing to fight me at any weight? Come on, sign the contract, Izzy. Do it. I agree with Jon Jones. I want to see the fight too. Now, who I favor in that matchup? I favor Jones. I don't know how Israel Adesanya is going to be able to handle Jones' wrestling. I know Israel Adesanya has great takedown defense, but Jones has better takedown. All right, he took down what's his name, Daniel Cormier, Alexander Gustafsson. He took down anybody you can name, Chael Sonnen. I favor Jones in that matchup. Sure, he doesn't have that hard crisp punch like he did before, earlier in his career. But boy, sorry about that. I did not mean for the ESPN alert to go up. But boy, do I favor Jon Jones in that matchup. It stylistically, in my opinion, if Jones could take down Adesanya, it's gonna be a long night. a long night, and I wouldn't be surprised if Jones would try to make it last all 25 minutes just to torture Adesanya. But if it requires a stand-up game, I favor Adesanya. I don't have any doubts that John Jones can take down Adesanya, because John Jones is not going to want to strike with Adesanya, especially after what he saw what Adesanya did to Paulo Costa. So I'm very looking forward to see what Dana White wants to do. I preferably would not want to see Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. Kind of losing interest on what Conor McGregor wants to do ever since he made tweets about how he wants to fight Diego Sanchez and it would be an honor. I don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see that. It's just Conor just trying to pick easy fights. For example, Donald Cowboy Cerrone. I don't know why that fight was ever made. But yeah, Dana White, make that fight. Make that fight between John Jones versus Israel Adesanya. That fight has to happen. It has to happen at the end of the year. Please. Let's see it. The world wants to see it. I want to see it. Alright, guys. It's a short episode for Flav Orellana's MMA show. Alright, guys. And that concludes what I been wanting to preach out. Alright, guys. You guys have a good night. And we'll talk more later. I'll probably drop an episode by Thursday. There's more to come. Peace out, guys.